Send in some data. Great time to start coughing. All right, we got Twitch, we got Facebook, we got Kick, and we got YouTube. All right. So far, so good. We are live. This is cool. Hey, what's up, everyone? My name is Matt, and I am a pastor in the Bay Area, California. I don't know why I'm not specifying the city, because it's literally in our church name where we're streaming in Fremont, California. I just wanted to hop on live today with a little bit of church coffee and just talk about life, talk about church and religion and what's going on in the world. Really, anything that the internet wants to talk about. And so I tried putting together an online Bible study, and it just didn't seem to be the thing that people wanted to do, and that's fine. I felt like I made it available, and it didn't really latch on, so maybe circle back to it another time. But really, it's something like, if it's not something that people are wanting to do, then I don't want to put time and energy into trying to force it to work. Because at that point, it's just being egotistical, I think, right? Because like my way of doing ministry has to be the best. But yeah, no, I don't really feel that pressure anymore. At one point, I think maybe I did, but now I just kind of want to get out there and see what questions the world has and make myself available. And so rather than saying, like, here's a Bible study, come to me, I just want to put myself out there. And if there's anything that I can help with in the online space, then I want to do that. So that's kind of my where I'm at in life right now. And kind of leads me to this live stream. So I'm really excited to be here streaming today. For the first time, our church is streaming midweek, outside of, like, I don't know, like Good Friday or maybe a worship night. Yeah, we really have only done stuff on Sundays, as far as I know. As far as the internet goes, like, we have our midweek groups and Bible studies, but this is kind of stepping outside of my comfort zone a little bit, just because I'm used to recording in our studio. That's where I'm streaming from right now. You can see some of our equipment in the back here, but I'm used to recording and being able to edit out anything that I wasn't feeling awesome about. And now I'm just streaming out to the internet and just trying to connect, really, because I think we all need a little more connection in our lives these days, especially post-pandemic. That's really what the COVID shelter in place taught me is, we just need more time together, more opportunity together. And especially if someone could not or would not come to church in the first place, then it's like, okay, well, doing the same thing over and over again isn't going to reach people who might have questions but might not feel comfortable coming to church. And so that's kind of why I'm here. I am kind of just holding this pretty loosely and seeing kind of what this turns into. And so if you have any comments or questions or suggestions about church, or what it's like being a pastor, or how we can faithfully follow Jesus when it feels like the world is out to get us, that's kind of the starting place of where I'm at. I did want to start by kind of just going through just some sermons. And so it's probably what I'll start with while we're kind of building some momentum, is kind of just looking at the sermon from the last Sunday and maybe giving some commentary. And then I also have a tab open about just current events in Christianity. And so we can talk a little bit about that as well and see if there's anything wild that's popped up in recent days. So maybe I'll start there, actually. That's kind of where I want to start today. It's the cool part about not having like a set thing, is you can kind of just do whatever you want. Yeah, so let's go ahead and screen share. All right, so far so good. The tech is all working. That's always great. So let's see what's going on in Christianity today. Brought to you by Google News. But if you know an independent news source that doesn't lean one way or the other politically, then I'd be interested to hear about it. Because I'm not looking to get any sort of bias. Like, I just want the truth. You know, I think we need a little more truth these days. But let's see. A number of Christian majority nations fell between 2010 and 2020. That makes sense. Israel does not welcome Christians. Okay. Unrepentant return of Christian diet culture. No idea what that is. Safe space for kids in a shaking world. I'm kind of curious about that. Let's check that one out. What do we got here? The UK. Across the pond. Maybe next time. Television ministry providing for children in the Middle East and North Africa. Hey, providing what? Support? Not just TV? That'd be great, honestly, to see a little ray of sunshine of stuff that is otherwise, I don't know, a lot of bad news in Christian culture right now. What do we got? Oh, we got a spam bot. Woohoo! All right. We're getting rid of you there. All right. Let's see. I just realized that this is like a lot of reading. I didn't realize that this was going to be so much reading, but probably should have seen that with foresight, not with hindsight. That's cool. Oh, are they literally just streaming to to kids? Is that what this is? Hey, Round Rodent. How's it going? Just looking at some Christian news these days. Okay, well, I had a little bit of hope, but, you know, Christian TV is not inherently a bad thing. It just seems like something like you could be doing a little bit more. I know it's kind of a hot topic, Christian mingled with education these days, but I guess it's something that parents can opt into, and so that's a good thing. To kind of, it's interesting that Christian TV is making a comeback. What's the open question here? That is a great question. I'm just kind of looking to get out into the digital space and make myself available as a pastor to respond to any questions that you might have about life, about Christianity, about what it's like being a pastor, anything that I can help with, honestly, because I'm really not here to promote any sort of agenda, just to kind of be present and be active in the digital space, because I don't think a lot of pastors are doing that. I think a lot of pastors are kind of just doing the same thing they've always done. And if we really only put our money where our mouth is on Sundays, then that doesn't make a lot of sense. That's not actually putting our money where our mouth is, or I guess in this case, putting our time where our mouth is. But yeah, it's really easy to just say that we want to reach people and we want to help people, but honestly, I don't see a lot of Christian profiles kind of just reaching out to the internet and being willing to have open conversation. So what denomination are you, if you're comfortable with me asking? Yeah, no, totally comfortable. I work for a non-denominational church, which is kind of a cop-out answer because non-denominational churches kind of look pretty similar to most other churches anyway. It basically just means that we're independent, and so we can kind of form our own theology and practices without a denomination umbrella telling us what to do. Me personally, I am kind of a-denominational or a-denominational, meaning like it's just not something that I feel is beneficial to the Christian community to focus on like secondary theological things that divide us. I think there was a period in the early church where there was some important divisions to say things like, yeah, Jesus is the Son of God and Jesus is also God, and we want to be really clear about those things, and we want to be making sure that we are discerning what actually belongs in the Bible because we can verify it. And so there's some important things to say, yes, this is what it means to be a Christian, or no, this is not what it means to be a Christian. But when you get into the minutia of especially things, my go-to example is like infant baptism. Like, should babies be baptized? Should they be dedicated? At what age can someone be baptized? Can someone be baptized a second time if they felt like, man, I just really need to reconnect with God? Because some people see that as kind of like re-upping a subscription. And when you get into all of the details like that divide different churches and kind of create an us versus them culture, that's where I feel like denominations aren't helpful, because we're supposed to be one body of Christ. At least that's what it says in the Bible, that we are supposed to be united in loving God and loving people, helping our community. And if we're so focused on what makes us different rather than what makes us similar, then I think we get distracted and we're no longer focused on helping our community. And that's really sad. It's a sad reality. And so that's my long-winded answer. I work for a non-denominational church, and I'm very lucky because that means that I'm free to express my beliefs about feeling like denominations are not always helpful. See, we got Hadvar777. Hello, how's it going? So glad that you can join us. We're just going through some Christian news. I wanted to close out of this one, go back here, and wanted to kind of just see where the world is at with Christianity these days. Support for Christian prayer in U.S. public schools varies widely by state. I'm not surprised. Yeah. I'm a Muslim, but this is interesting to me. Did you see the EQ today? Well, number one, glad you're here. Glad that we could chat a little bit. I'm super excited that you're here. Did I see the EQ today? I don't know what the EQ is, so pardon my ignorance if I'm missing something big. Oh, the tsunami issued today at Hawaii. No, I didn't. Let me look at that. Let me open a new tab here. And tsunami updates. Hey, happens to be the first one. Let's see if there's something there. We actually got tsunami warnings today here in California as well, which is kind of wild. Let's see. Eastern coastal areas, tsunami. I did see something about a major earthquake. Unfortunately, I was also multitasking at the time and didn't get a chance to look into it. But man, tsunami warnings for Chile, Easter Island, Colombia, Peru, French Polynesia, Galapagos, Papua New Guinea, Mexico, Japan, United States, California, Hawaii, Alaska, and Oregon. You gotta love all these ads when you're trying to read the news, because I definitely want to hear about Join Mochi, right? And then advisories lifted in Japan, Philippines, Russia, Canada, Guam. Yeah, wow. No, this is wild. Major flooding avoided. You know it's bad when like the Bay Area has a tsunami warning. Like our thing is earthquakes. Like can we just that's already enough. Can we stick with that? You know? 8.8 earthquake in Russia, which triggered tsunami warnings for Hawaii. Wondering if it had any divine reasons for it, because it happened on the date 37. Interesting. I'm not too sure about that. What are you thinking is the divine reason for that? I know that the number 3 has some divine numerology connection. So does the number 7, of course, being the 7 days of creation. 3 being Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. 2 days ago, I was wondering about an earthquake happening at the Pacific. Interesting. And this just happened a little while ago, right? That's wild that you were just thinking about that. Let's see. Oh, that's cool. They give you a little timeline with the updates. So Easter Island and Galapagos Islands, they are evacuating. 8.8 magnitude earthquake. Let me look into this a little bit more. Yeah, no paywall, but a lot of ads. Thank you a lot, Google, for the ads. Okay, so it's just a link out to something else. Yeah. If it can happen on any date this month, it had to be today, because 30 is the age Christ got baptized. Yeah. And 7, you know what the number stands for. Yeah, number of completion, 7 days of creation. Seen all throughout the Old Testament. We have a cool video series I'm working on called Through the Bible on our YouTube page. Recommend checking that out. The number 7 comes up a lot in Genesis. Yeah, 37 is like a strong date for any warning or notice from the Lord. Yeah, it's interesting. Numerology in Christianity is one of those things that, like, it's kind of hit or miss. You do want to be a little bit careful not to read into things too much, but you don't not have a point, right? That's the thing, is we see these periods of time in the Bible, and the biblical authors, they use lots of set periods of times, like 40 days or 40 years, or even the hundreds of year intervals between things, or 7-day rest, 70-year return. Like, there's numbers all throughout the Bible. So there's definitely like a substantial amount of realistic, a little bit of realism to the fact that numerology can kind of point us towards things. And I say this with a lot of things, not just numerology. We just want to be careful, because of course, like, what really will show us whether or not that is true and those things are happening and this is a sign from God, as if things will continue to unfold in that way. So it's easy to say, oh, this earthquake happened on this date, that's a sign from God. But then if nothing comes of that, then it's like, oh, okay, well, never mind, I guess. But I like to just try to be a little patient and say, like, okay, let's be aware, let's be cautious, see what's going on, and let's kind of ease into this and see where this is going to go. Numerology sometimes gives an idea about what's happening. Mark of the beast, identify the Antichrist. Divine warnings every day. Do not conflate our observations with divine injunctions. Wow, that is a sentence. I read the Revelations a while ago to see if it relates to the events taking place right now. Yeah. It's interesting. Stuff like the Mark of the Beast. Again, it's another thing that we should approach with caution. I'm not saying it's one way or the other. But when we take a look at how Revelation was written, it's a combination of John writing to a specific culture in a specific time, and then also looking forward with these really interesting, imaginative, metaphorical visions that he's having. And so some of it can be tied to these specific ancient events that happened, with like the Mark of the Beast and 666 kind of having ties to Nero. We did a series on the book of Revelation where our lead pastor actually dove deep into a lot of these things, and so I highly recommend that. Again, that's on YouTube, but it's a weird mix of history and prophecy. And prophecy is less about saying, here's what's going to happen in the future, and more about spelling out the consequences of our own actions, if that makes sense. It's more about saying, like, hey, if you continue down this path, like, here's how things are going to go. Typically not a good way. And so that's kind of what Revelation is about. Its genre is apocalyptic literature, and so it's got ties to the book of Daniel. But again, like, it's one of those things where we should just be a little extra cautious in approaching it and reading too much into our own context of what's going on. But again, like, there's like scary things that happen there that, like, of course we want to have on our radar. We want to be aware of. So these ads are bothering me so much. Let me see if I can. Aha! There we go. And now chat's blocking it. That's great. It was almost better before I messed with it. Well, at least then we can read a little more. That's good. Yeah, no, this is heartbreaking. I'm sure that there's plenty of people who have been displaced, who are directly affected by it. We've been lucky here in California to just have an alert with no evacuations. Tsunami wave in Russia, close to Japan. Submerged a fishing plant in a town of 2,000 people. Wow. 30 miles beneath the sea level. Wow. Well, let's take a look. Let me grab my headphones.
Firewalla is more than just a firewall. Firewalla's advanced VPN client and VPN
That's terrible. Wow. That's a large area. Man, it's really kind of frustrating to be here and not somewhere where we can help, you know? 8.8 is the strongest since 2011. I don't doubt it, honestly. It's wow. I don't want to use any Christian platitudes of like, oh wow, thoughts and prayers, or my heart goes out to you, but like, no, this is terrible. It's a tragedy, and if there's any way that we as a church can help, like, if anyone's able to connect us with people and resources that are working in this area, we would, of course, love to help in any way we can. And hopefully this is the extent of it, and it doesn't get worse, because it sounds like there were evacuations, and hopefully people are safe. And it sounds like there's still a lot of places that are on edge about this. Yeah, Hawaii had sirens. This is wild. It's the entire Pacific. It looks like that is on high alert about this. Yeah, man. Round rodent. Yeah, I did see your comment. Can you be a Christian and disagree with certain parts of the Bible? Great question. Let me come into full screen here for that one. Can you be a Christian and disagree with certain parts of the Bible? I think it's a question that needs more clarification, personally. Yeah, I guess I would just ask, like, what parts of the Bible do you disagree with? Because the Bible is a long and confusing book. And there's certain things that read at face value that would say something different to the people it was written to originally than it does to us. How do you feel about the critique that Paul, especially in Romans, capitulated to the state and subserviated Jesus' clear and concise message of radical love into one that serves the state rather than our neighbors? Yeah, can you, if you're referencing something in particular, can you drop a Bible reference for me just so I can dive in and look that up? I know that there's a lot of stuff with Paul and Romans in particular. It's one of those divisive things that I was talking about earlier, where there's a group of people who are like, only Jesus, no Paul. And there's a group of people who read the teaching of Jesus through the lens of Paul, as if Paul was more credible than Jesus. Of course, I don't agree with that. And I don't agree with disregarding Paul's teachings either. I think we just need to understand a little better. Romans 13. Okay, cool. Let's look it up. I'm excited. Let's dive in. I have a different passage pulled up here, so you can ignore that. It's a video that I'm working on. Let's go to Romans 13. Okay. Let's check this out. Aha, I wasn't screen sharing, so you guys didn't see that anyway. More ads. Gotta love these ads. All right. So we're looking at submission to governing authorities. Let every person be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God. Yeah, let me look. And, oh, yeah. There's no authority except which God has established. Yeah. The authorities that exist have been established by God. Yeah, I see exactly what you're saying here. Well, maybe not exactly. That's hyperbole. And so if you want to give me some more context for what you disagree with about this, feel free. But where I think you might be going with this is that every world leader is put into position by God. It's tricky because even you continue to read and it's talking about people rebelling against authority. Rulers hold no terror for those who do right, but those who do wrong. It's a tricky thing because it's a way of speaking that we don't use anymore. But it is tricky, right? Saying this is why you pay taxes, for the authorities are God's servants who give their full time to governing. It's a little tricky, especially in this political climate where things are very divisive. Things are very you versus me, us versus them. And it can be hard to feel like, okay, Paul is calling us to submit to authority. Well, what if I disagree with what's going on here? And I think that's like a very fair thing to ask, you know? I think I think it's, like I said, it's a way of speaking that we don't speak in anymore. Because it's not about rolling over and submitting to whatever authority comes our way, right? We see that clearly with Jesus, who rebels against political and religious corruption with the Pharisees and what's going on in the temple. He's flipping tables. Just like Jesus disagreed with the government when he came. Yeah. The interesting thing, I think Jesus is very apolitical. And I think Paul is maybe taking a different approach to being apolitical. Both of what they're saying is basically the kingdom of God is not concerned with whatever happens here on earth. The kingdom of God, like, the world is going to keep turning no matter what happens with any particular government or authority. And so Jesus says, well, render to Caesar what is Caesar's, render to God what is God's. Basically, he's saying, yeah, follow the laws of the society that you live in, because that will show people your character. And in the same way, Paul is saying to be living life as a Christian means that we are going to be law-abiding citizens. What that does not mean is that we just have to roll over and take whatever corrupt thing is happening without any argument. And I think that's maybe where there's a bit of translation issue linguistically and culturally, but mostly culturally, I would say, because Paul is not saying to just without question submit to whatever the authority has for you as far as the law goes, but he's saying in general this is the rule, but there's going to be exceptions to the rule, right? We're not saying this is a blanket statement for everything, but saying that in general, to be a good Christian means following the law, right? Don't, just because you believe in the kingdom of God doesn't give you the right to just start breaking human laws. Of course, if you are really following Jesus, then being a good citizen is part of that. Without the Sans Paul point of view, the Christian abolitionists would never have freed the slaves, for none of the power structure at the time give any way to enter that opinion into the political sphere. Same with MLK, Nelson Mandela, etc. Yeah, I think that's a very good point. Like the people of a certain time, especially in United States history, used the Bible to oppress people, and that's the opposite of what the Bible intends to do. The Bible intends to free people. Again, what Paul is saying here is, in general, be a good citizen. That's not to say that you should never speak out against injustice. And so people like MLK and Mandela, people who freed slaves, like they are knowingly and willingly rebelling against unjust laws, against injustice. And so everything that we do should filter through our faith, through the lens of Jesus. And so in this case, Paul is saying, yeah, in general, when things are good, be a good citizen. There are other parts of the Bible that very clearly say that we should not bow down to authority just because they're authority. So I hope that makes sense. There's a really cool book that I've been meaning to read. It's been recommended to me several times, so I'm like kind of behind, but it's called Reading Romans Backwards. And the way that Paul writes Romans, if we take a look, come on, you can do it, load. Or maybe not. All right. Oh, we're taking away the whole thing now. That's nice. Let's just give you a little refresh. Okay. We start with Paul introducing his desire to visit Rome. But he ends almost with the beginning. He ends with the point. And so he does all of his cordial things that he does in his writing. And then he kind of builds up to a point. And so we don't exactly see the point right away. And that's why Romans has maybe been used in recent history to kind of say something that appears counter to what Jesus is saying. But Paul is kind of ramping up to the point that he wants to make. Make every effort to do what leads to peace. That's the point that he's working towards. He's basically saying, follow God. That's the point. And all of these other things that he's talking about along the way are stumbling blocks to that. And so reading Romans backwards kind of flips the entire thing on its head, because his introduction, the thesis of what Paul is saying, is actually at the end, where in our writing we kind of look for the thesis at the beginning. So I hope that is helpful. It's a really tricky thing to navigate. Spider-Man Day, that's cool. Sorry, ADHD. But let me know. Did that help? Does that not help? Do you have any more questions? I'm really excited to be diving into the Bible on our first stream. That's awesome. I did want to keep looking through the news. That was the tsunami. Let's see. The Christian Assassin. What is the Christian Assassin? This was published a month ago, and I haven't heard anything about this. Okay, I need an account. Thank you, New York Times. There was a way to get around this, but let's see. What if I just go here and search for Christian Assassin? Okay. Let's try this one. Okay. Man charged with murdering Minnesota legislators said God would raise up apostles and prophets to correct the church. Okay, let's see if there's actually a connection here. But another question. Let me talk about this first. Is salvation work-based in your point of view? This is another tricky one. This is getting, I'm guessing, into the book of James, where he says faith without works is dead. Hey, what's up, Mango King? Glad you're joining us. We are just talking through some questions about Christianity and about faith. And so if you have any questions or comments, please weigh in. But yeah, Round Rodent. Is salvation work-based? Yes and no. Let's see. The best way that I can explain this is that salvation is freely given. We see that with the rebel on the cross who was crucified with Jesus. He didn't have any sort of opportunity before he passed to live out his faith. And yet, Jesus says, like, hey, you're going to be with me in paradise. And so if we take what Jesus is saying there seriously, then that means no, there aren't any works required for salvation. However, what James is saying, again, a highly controversial thing, there's been plenty of people who wanted to take the book of James out of the Bible because they felt it contradicted what Jesus was saying. But it's not that James is saying something different, right? James is the brother of Jesus. And so if we should be taking anyone seriously, it's probably the person who needed to be convinced the most that his brother was God. That's kind of wild. And so the fact that he's weighing in on things is very important. And what he's saying is not a correction of what Jesus is saying, but rather he's saying this is what it looks like to live out your faith. If you claim to have faith, but you're not willing to live it out, then your faith is dead, right? There's no faith here, really. The rebel on the cross had no opportunity to do so, but we can assume based off of what Jesus said that his heart was in the right place. And so for James, he's speaking to Christians who are alive and not actively being crucified right at that moment. And he's saying, if you claim to love Jesus, but you don't act like you love Jesus, then you don't really love Jesus. So I hope that answers your question. Mango King, I always thought of salvation like John 15, the true vine. There's only one way up the vine as branches. To add on, if we're not connected to the vine, we are dead. It makes sense that if we're dead and not connected, we can't bear fruit, nor do works in his name, and the opposite is true too. Yeah, totally. You are spot on. Like, you can tell if someone is following Jesus, if they claim to follow Jesus, you can tell if they're really following Jesus by the fruit that they produce. Just like a tree or a vine, if it's dead and not healthy, it doesn't produce any fruit. It's kind of like Jesus and the fig tree, right? It's kind of an odd story where you kind of have to look in a couple different places to get the context, but Jesus walks into Jerusalem, sees a fig tree with no fruit, and he curses it. And then later comes back out and the fig tree is dead. And it's because the tree was producing no fruit. It wasn't a fruitful tree anyway. Jesus was just revealing what was actually going on with the tree, which is kind of cool. Yeah, that's not to say we're all at the same rates. Everyone is at a different place in their journey, but we will in his timing. Yeah, sometimes it takes people longer to get there. Some people, like the rebel on the cross, they go a long time without following Jesus, and then at the end of their life realize, oh, this was the point. And other people, they get it early on, and then it's their responsibility to continue to live that out. Some people get it, but then they miss the point somewhere along the way, and they kind of need some help kind of coming back to the point of things. So it's not the things that we do that earn us salvation, because salvation is freely given for anyone who believes and is willing to follow Jesus. But sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a second. But we don't earn our salvation through those works. It's like we've been given a all-inclusive pass, and with that pass, we can either hoard it for ourselves, or we can keep swiping that card and taking care of people. And one of those things really speaks to the fact that we won the lottery. And the other one speaks to the character of someone who really was going to hoard everything for themselves no matter what. And I don't want to be the person that hoards my faith and just tries to follow Jesus in a bubble, because that's not what we're called to do. Salvation is not sanctification. Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, salvation is the point where Jesus died on the cross, connecting with the point where we decide, I am going to live life differently and follow Jesus. And sanctification is the active pursuit of following Jesus and having him change our lives. And in reality, we're never going to be perfectly sanctified by anything that we do. We're ultimately always going to need God. But we live out our faith by taking those steps towards sanctification nonetheless, because that's the proof that we actually have been saved. We've been given this gift, and we want to continue to pursue that, knowing that Jesus is going to fill in the gaps nonetheless. Since we brought up sanctification, why do you think God sanctifies us slowly? That's a great question. I've never actually gotten that question before. I think I would just add on to what I was saying. Sanctification is not something that comes naturally to us as humans. Our spirit is always going to be torn between following God and following what we want. And so I don't know if it's necessarily an issue of why does God take that slow, but more of why are we so resistant to it? And I think it's just because of our human nature. We want to be in control. We want to be the main character. And God is there willing to sanctify us. And it's easy to say when things are good, God, I want to be pure. I want to be clean. I want to live my old life behind. What really proves that we want to follow Jesus is what happens when things are hard and things are difficult and the old temptations come around again and we're put in compromising situations. And that's the time that it's we might start to see ourselves slip a little bit. And we need to trust God in those situations. And if we are really dedicated towards pursuing sanctification, which is just a fancy way of saying pursuing God, making our decisions and keeping us in whole and right relationship with him and living a godly life, righteous life, that's when it really shows where our priorities lie. And some people falter at that point, and then they need help getting back up again and getting to that point. And so it's slower. And I think we've all been there. I don't think anyone gets it fast. I think it takes time for everyone. But There's a verse, my cup overflows. I can see it two ways. We need to empty our cup before we can have it filled, or we can have our cup sanctified as our cup overflows with time, little by little purified. Yeah, there's multiple ways of looking at it. Whatever metaphor is easier for you to comprehend, to wrap your mind around, and apply to your life, then like that's the view that you should take. I was talking a little bit earlier about unnecessary divisions in the church, and sanctification, justification, glorification, like that whole series of diagrams that I had to study in seminary. It's like, at what point is that not helpful? At what point are we nitpicking because God's plan is going to unfold one way or the other, whether or not we think we have it figured out correctly or not. And so ultimately, whatever helps you be most faithful to God, that is the way that we should think about things like that. And so saying we need to empty ourselves before we can have it filled, I think that's great. I think saying like, I'm going to leave the old things behind so that God can fill it up with new things, fill my life up with new things, I think that's fantastic. Other people, they're a little more hesitant, a little more slow. They want to see God working, and they're not ready to lay things down yet. But they also still have questions, and they want to get to know God, and they realize that their way isn't working out. And so it just takes a little bit longer, and they need to kind of slowly let go of those things. And so I think God will work with all types of people. Is God's plan negotiable? Great question. I think in order to answer that question, you would have to know what God's plan is, and God's plan is not always super clear. Ultimately, we know that the end goal of his plan is restoration of all things, and reconciling our relationship with him. And so I don't see any reason to negotiate that, because I like that plan. It's better than any plan that I could come up with. And so if you have a clarification or anything to that question, I'd be happy to hear it if there's something specific you're wondering about. But I think God works with us. I think oftentimes despite what we want to do. And God is very patient with that. And so I think God's plan is going to be perfect no matter what. And it's going to get us where we need to go. How much we want to hesitate and resist, I think God is already taking into account. And so it might feel like we're negotiating, and really God is just being very patient with us. I was dog sitting my friend's dog. When I led him to the right places, he would resist my leash. Only when other dogs were barking, then he listened. So we're like the dog in that analogy. When we lean on our own understanding, when we do what we want, we're not seeing the full picture that God has. Yeah, totally. Yeah, Jacob wrestles with God, literally, and then goes on to be renamed Israel and create the kingdom of God. Yeah, I did a video about that. Jacob translates to he who wrestles, and Israel translate to he who contends with God. Yeah, you obviously know your stuff. And so I really appreciate these questions, because it's making me kind of have to go back and remember and refresh on these things. I really appreciate it. This is how we build each other up, is by asking good questions. But Jacob literally wrestles with God. And so I'm guessing this ties back to your question about negotiating. But I think, again, God is patient, and God is willing to participate in the wrestling, even though he doesn't have to, if that makes sense. Like if we were to face God in a wrestling match, I'm pretty sure God wins. But if we take a look at the character of Jacob, he's an interesting guy who gets his way because he's smart. And he wrestles away his brother's inheritance from him and his brother's birthright. And he thinks that he can do the same thing with God. And so God lets him tire himself out and then dislocates his hip and humbles him. And from that point forward, we start to see a different Jacob. And that's oftentimes when we see someone's name change or someone go by a different name, we see some sort of character flip in their story. We see that from Abram to Abraham, from Saul to Paul. Even though he's not renamed, he's going by a different name to different groups of people. Yeah. I've actually done wrestling and jiu-jitsu. My brother and his kids do jiu-jitsu. It's very cool, very scary. I don't think I could do that. And so I'm very impressed by it. A blue belt at best. But hey, keep working at it. I just keep putting in that time. When I go against someone who's done it for 10 plus years, they're nice to me because it wouldn't be a competition. Yeah, no, great connection. I love that. I love a good real world connection, you know, being able to wrestle with someone with much more experience. Like, yeah, they could easily get you to pin or tap, but like, then what would be the point? You're not learning anything from that situation. Same thing when Jacob is wrestling God. Jacob wouldn't learn anything from just complete and total submission right off the bat. He needs some humility. We both learn from it. Yeah. If the more experienced guy just beat me, what would we both learn? Yeah. The game of wrestling is about winning and losing, but the sport of wrestling is about mutual respect. Yeah. Giving your all, being naked, and improving the other person. I don't know how much nakedness is in the sport, but I see what you're saying. Like, nakedness as in being laid bare, like vulnerability, and giving it your all, being genuine. That's all very good things. It's just a funny way of saying it. But that's just me personally. You guys have great questions. I really appreciate it. One more question. Go for it. You only wear a singlet nowadays, but back then you have to be, yeah. I would not wrestle today. Not just because of the skill and physical aptitude it takes, but also because I don't want to wear a singlet. I would definitely not make it when wrestling was wrestling naked. That, and the guys who do sumo, again, another extremely skilled sport, and you're just wearing essentially a loincloth. I don't know what if there's a different cultural name for it, but essentially you're walking around in your chonies wrestling another guy. Oh man, that is nope, not something that I'm comfortable with. But hey, no, props to the people who do it. You got to have a certain level of confidence, and you need to know what you're doing. Mawashi, thank you. Mawashi, that's the cultural term for the loincloth that the sumos wear. Thank you. Why do you think Jesus waited until his 30s to start his ministry? When he's baptized, he instead goes to the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights to fast. He was capable of miracles from an early age. How come? Yeah, good question. The Bible doesn't really talk about it much. There's one passage, I believe, in the book of Luke. I could be wrong about that. But let me screen share so that you can see what I'm doing. But Jesus in the temple. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. I was right. Haha. Cool. I like it when that happens. The boy at the temple. So Jesus goes to the temple. He actually runs away from his parents. And after 3 days, they find him in the temple. And he's just asking questions. And so we have to ask, if Jesus is God and God knows everything, then why is Jesus asking questions? Jesus is also human, right? And so I don't want to go down that rabbit trail necessarily right now. But he wanted to be in his Father's house. He wanted to know more. He wanted to take time to learn. And so that doesn't totally give us a complete picture about what you're asking. The miracle of turning water into wine, that happens still around his 30s. But we also see in that story that obviously Mary is like, Jesus, why don't you help them? And so she knows something that we don't at that point. But why Jesus waited so long, and then when he was baptized, he didn't automatically start his ministry. He went into the wilderness. He wanted to connect with God, and he took plenty of time to go to the temple, to in Jewish tradition, go through his temple education, go through the process of becoming a rabbi. He took all this time to study and connect with God and learn and grow and do things the right way. He has access to this great godly knowledge, and yet he decides to live life as a human. And as humans, we should continue to strive to grow closer to Jesus. And me being almost 30, there's a lot that I in my time in ministry have learned and needed to be humbled about and had time to grow. And so without that time of growth and learning, and honestly for me, probably not for Jesus, but being confidently incorrect about things, I needed that time to be humbled and to take a back seat and be a disciple before I jumped into teaching, because I needed that maturity and that foundation, so that I could help others have a clear picture of what's going on. And Jesus does the same thing when he goes into the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights. He's going connecting with God. He's fasting, and fasting is giving something up so that we can replace it with something God related. And so he goes out in the wilderness to pray and connect with God, and then he's tempted and tested. And this is the point where Jesus' ministry begins, where it's like, okay, I'm ready, let's go. And so I hope that makes a little more sense. And yes, the 40 days is symbolic of the 40 years Israel wander. That's another numerology thing where we can see the interconnections of everything. It's awesome. Moses was 80 before he led his people out of Egypt. It seems to be an echo. Yeah, definitely. There's so many echoes. The Bible Project on YouTube, they call them hyperlinks, which is cool because it's like a Wikipedia page that connects two different similar. It connects two things via a similar thread. It's never too late to start. Yeah, I mean, Moses and most of the people in the Old Testament were old when they started really living faithfully to Jesus, and I think that speaks a lot to the the way that we live life in our youth, and needing to take a little more time to be humbled and be willing to say, yeah, life isn't quite going my way, and I've tried everything that I know, and so the only logical thing that I can do now is trust God, because his way's working out and mine isn't. And so speaks really to the arrogance of youth. And I was lucky to have some difficult times in my teens and 20s to be humbled and get to a point where I'm at now, where I can say, yeah, I'm going to do everything that I can to help people draw closer to God if that's what they want. And also be honest about the fact that there's a lot that I don't know, and I'm still learning every day. And there's no end point. Everyone is still going to keep learning. And so when we compare someone who came to know Jesus at an early age and spent their life studying and learning more about God, compared to the rebel on the cross who got to know Jesus on the cross, put his faith in him, and then passed away, and didn't have a chance to do all that studying, I think there's going to be an equal amount of questions when we finally get to have those questions answered. How do you feel about cross-religious studies and that we can take from other studies and rituals to strengthen our own faith? Good question. Sorry, I'm just taking a sip of coffee. I've been talking a lot. Cross-religious studies. I think it's helpful. I think it's beneficial. I think it does take a certain amount of maturity and confidence in your faith as a Christian. I have gotten this question a lot in recent years about just different paths to knowing God, and if different religions all lead to the same place. And it's a very tricky thing, because Jesus says, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. And that's a very clear statement that he makes. And so it's hard to say that all paths lead to Jesus. However, I would say that most popular religions, I won't say all religions, but there is probably an aspect of most religions that either intentionally or unintentionally points to the character of God through Jesus. And it's kind of like shooting an arrow at a target, and you clip it a little bit, but you're not hitting the bullseye. Jesus is the bullseye, and he's the way and truth and the life. He's the way to God. But other religions, they sometimes get so close to hitting the mark, and it's like you're almost there. You're just missing Jesus and who Jesus was. Like, you are actually believing a lot of the same moral things that the Bible is teaching, but you're actually getting so close and missing what could really open up your faith if the puzzle piece of Jesus was added to the picture, if that makes sense. When it comes to studying other religious texts, I think it's beneficial, especially if you're living in a particular context and understanding that context, because we don't want to come in guns blazing with a white savior complex of, I have the best religion and yours is wrong. It's much better to come in with a place of understanding and knowing, if you were talking to someone who's Muslim or Hindu or Buddhist, and being able to say, yeah, no, I have questions about your faith. I'm willing to admit that I don't know something. And yeah, it might not change what I believe, but I care about you enough to get to know where you're coming from so that we can relate to each other. And like I said, there's a lot of overlap. It's just often missing Jesus, which I believe is the point of how we get to God. And it provides a sense of freedom, where many religions lock us into a certain way of life, if that makes sense. I believe that if I'm wrong about my faith, I'll perish. That is a leap of faith I'm willing to take by choosing to follow Jesus. Yeah, that's interesting. It's an interesting perspective. If I'm wrong about my faith, I will surely perish. Yeah, I guess I'm assuming here. So correct me if I'm wrong. If you are someone who's following Jesus, you call yourself a Christian, but correct me if I'm wrong. Then we don't really know what's going to happen, and even if we believe in Jesus and call ourselves Christians, we don't totally know what's going to happen. Like, the Bible is not trying to give us a picture of what the afterlife looks like. It's trying to paint a picture of how we should be living life now. Hey, I see Jake Hudson on Kick. Hi. Happy to have you here. We're just talking about some religious stuff, and specifically as it pertains to the Bible, but we're right now talking about how it connects with other religions. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free, join the chat. Happy to have you here. Let's see. Sin translates from hamartia, an archery term to miss the mark. Let me look that up, because I am not as knowledgeable. The term sounds familiar to me. Let's see. Let's switch over here. Gotcha. So, hamartia is a fatal flaw leading to the downfall of a tragic hero or heroine. Yeah. Hamartia, or hubris. Hubris is like overconfidence, though. Yeah, hamartia. Yeah, I need a little bit of a refresher, because actually at one point I was going to be an English teacher, and I instead decided to be a pastor. But sometimes religions just miss the mark. That's what I believe, is that a lot of religions they're not necessarily paths to God, because Jesus is the path to God, but they kind of point to Jesus being the missing puzzle piece. And in my study of and conversations with other religions, it's just like, man, if you just had the missing puzzle piece, then this would just unlock so much for you. Just people feeling kind of bogged down and chained by their religion, or whatever it may be. But there are 4 possibilities for the afterlife. Death is death, or there's an afterlife. And in either scenario, we either die as believers or non-believers, or go into the afterlife as non-believers or believers. Okay, I see what you're saying. So it's a graph. Okay, let's see if I can get like a whiteboard or something going here. Let me open up Canva, because this is a really good conversation. Let me do this. And okay, let's go ahead and do that and that and add a heading. So I see what you're talking about here. What we're looking at is essentially what you're saying is 4 views of dying, basically being we believe, or we don't, and then there we go, and then either death is the end, keep hitting the wrong button, or there is something after. So depending on where we're at, if we believe and death is the end, then that's sad. If we believe and there is something after, then great, we believed and things are good. If we don't believe and death is the end, then that is sad. And if we don't believe and there is something after, then that's also sad. So really, when you think about it, I can see what you're saying, that we have, I'm going to put a little frowny face here. This is sad, because death is the end, and that's sad. Death is sad. Dying is sad. And if things just end and we don't believe, then things have still ended, and that's sad. If we don't believe, but there is something after, then we're missing out on whatever that thing is. But if we believe and there is something after, smiley face, that's great. I can see what you're saying there. It is a very logical way of thinking about it. So I mean, I've talked to people who have this perspective, and I don't know if this is exactly what you're saying, but if it's essentially there's no reason to not believe. And that can be a dangerous way of thinking, because we're believing in God basically for the insurance and not because of how God is calling us to live. I don't know if that makes sense. Let me catch up on chat here a little bit, because that took me a little bit of time. Have you read any Kierkegaard? No, I have not. I get really sad when I read philosophy, but I have read bits and pieces as I've studied. It is important to be somewhat knowledgeable when it comes to different perspectives on things, but I have not had the privilege of diving deep into some of that stuff yet. Specifically having to do with Jesus is known as Pascal's wager. Yes, still an interesting view. Yeah, let me look that up, because I probably just stumbled onto something that would have been much easier to just read rather than doing all of that mental load. Pascal's wager. Ah, look at that. It is in one's best interest to believe in God, even if they're not certain of God's existence. Look at that. Wow. Yeah, so we basically reinvented the wheel, chat. Thank you for coming to my Reinventing the Wheel podcast. Yeah, so I don't believe that is a good way to follow Jesus. I can see why people think that way, but it's all logic and no heart. There's no faith in that. And I mean, James says faith without works is dead. I would say faith without faith is definitely dead. But it's still an exciting premise to explore nonetheless. But thank you for giving me the words to get there, so that way I can just reference that next time rather than drawing up a whole Canva document. But yeah, How you guys doing? Any more questions? Maybe we look through Google News a little bit more. I'm just passing an hour 20 here. I think I scheduled an hour and a half. But if things are going well, we'll keep going. You have to prepare lunch now. Please enjoy. What are you having for lunch? It's a good question. I am having chicken and potatoes. Very healthy lunch today. I enjoyed the topics today. I followed. We'll have you in my thoughts. Hey, thank you for the follow. I appreciate it. Please follow. On be doing these live streams on Wednesdays, and then we have our church live streams, which you'll probably see me on, kind of doing a similar sort of talking head thing on Sundays. And if you're interested, we have our Church Online Discord, where we can keep the conversation going throughout the week. We're just getting it off the ground, but if you want to be a part of it, then it is there for you. Salad and soup. Solid, honestly. A good salad, a good soup, that's a good meal. So, hey, enjoy your lunch. Thank you for tuning in. Round rodent. I hate the logic-based arguments because it's like Steven Crowder's Changed My Mind segments. I got you. Anyone asking for logic and evidence-based arguments for God, asking for something profound, they don't even know it. Change my mind is actually them asking for you to change their heart. Yeah. It is interesting. There's a lot of ways that I've seen people connect to Christianity. I've seen it through things like Pascal's Wager. I've seen it even through something like astrology. And it's just some really interesting ways that people start asking questions. And while I could get hung up on the way that they came to start asking those questions, I think I would rather just focus on the fact that they're asking questions and move forward from there, because I believe that someone who's like changed my mind, like you're saying, like really what God wants to do is change their heart. And there's no amount of like convincing someone that will get them to believe. But it is a starting place for some people. The logical arguments, the exploring the history and the culture, the way that the Bible was constructed and what it says about the universe is an on-ramp to asking really good questions about who God is. And so, I get it. Like, I am not a fan of the people who kind of go out and openly invite discourse, but there is something to be said when there's a relationship there to having those discussions and talking those things through, where it can be really good. And so, while I don't necessarily recommend this as like the way to follow Jesus, because you're not actually following Jesus, you're just betting on God. And even the Bible says that many will come to Jesus and say, yeah, no, we believe in you. And he'll say, I don't know you. You never did anything to show me that we had a relationship. What's going on? And so that's the important piece. But as an on-ramp, yeah. I mean, there's so many different ways that people come to start asking questions about knowing Jesus. And then when they know Jesus, I think that's the point where some of this starts to go away. And I really like that curiosity still stays there, though. Because I think that those people, they really want to understand. They don't just walk into things blindly. Because they want to know. They want to understand. And as long as we can pursue God knowing that we're not going to have it all figured out, but really get excited about the things that we do figure out, and you know what? That's a win for me. So Yeah, I think a lot of good stuff today. I was planning on doing like a commentary on our most recent sermon, but I think this ended up being a lot better. um, my throat is actually starting to hurt because I've been talking so much, and coffee is not helping. So I am going to get some water, and next Wednesday I'll be back with water so that we can talk about some of this stuff a little bit more, talk about some questions that you have about God, about the Bible, about religion, what it's like to be a pastor, whatever your questions are. I'm really happy with how this went, and so I'm gonna keep doing it. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being here. Got one last comment from Round Rodent. When it's in good faith, circumambulating. That's a word. Circumambulating. It's the debate bros who are asking in bad faith with hardened hearts. Yeah, engaging those I think are, yeah. So that's the kind of stuff that I've been talking about just like unnecessary division. Like if you're just going looking for an argument, like that's not good. It's not good. It's never going to be good. But if you're going in with the intention of like we want to build up each other's faith, we want to ask good questions, that's awesome. So hey, thank you. Really appreciate you being here. Please drop a follow or a like, and I hope to see you in the next stream because your questions have been really great. I really appreciate it. So thank you guys for tuning in. I'm gonna go drink some water, and you should too. Hydrate because we should take care of ourselves. So hey, I'm running out of things to say.